So welcome everybody to our 5th anniversary. Yesterday was 5 years since the start of Sunday Mornings with Twitchy Woman, and it was 10 years since I started my blog, both of which were on March 22nd. So 5 and 10 years, so really important anniversaries. When we started this, I never thought that we would go beyond 2 or 3 months because the pandemic was going to be over and we'd go back to meeting in person. So here we are 5 years later, and I don't know how many of these Sunday mornings we've done, but there have been a lot over the last 5 years. And I want to thank all of you for joining me. We've had over 2,500 women join us at some point during this 5-year period, which is amazing. Shows the power of women with Parkinson's. And speaking of women with Parkinson's, we have a wonderful speaker today, Dr. Rebecca Gilbert, who is from the American Parkinson's Disease Association. And let me pull up her bio. It's right here. She's the Chief Mission Officer at the American Parkinson's Disease Association, playing a key role in developing APDA's long-term mission strategy, overseeing APDA's research portfolio, and providing medical and clinical expertise to support programming and educational content. Dr. Gilbert received her MD degree at Weill Medical College at Cornell University and a PhD in cell biology and genetics at the Weill Graduate School of Medical Sciences. So she knows a whole lot more than I do about this stuff. Smart lady. Anyway, she then completed her neurology residency training as well as movement disorders fellowship training at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center. She continues to maintain a limited schedule of patients 1 day a week through Bellevue Hospital Center in New York. Prior to joining the APDA, she was an associate professor of neurology at the Fresco Institute for Parkinson's and Movement Disorders, the NYU Langone Medical Center, and Bellevue Hospital. She initiated and directed the NYU Movement Disorders Fellowship, participated in clinical trials and other research initiatives for Parkinson's disease, and lectured widely on Parkinson's. And I first met her 7 or 8 years, more than that, whenever it was the American Parkinson's Disease Association, which is now the Parkinson's Foundation, had a symposium for women with Parkinson's, and 25 of us were in attendance, and Dr. Gilbert was one of the presenters. And I remember being very impressed at the time. So I think you're going to enjoy her talk. And my biggest question is, what do you do with the feather?
We'll talk about the feather.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll put up your slides. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharon, for the introduction. And I want to correct you. You said that I know more than you do, and that is absolutely not true. There is a knowledge that all of you have who are here today that I'm sure you're well aware, physicians do not have. And so when we say starting the conversation, that is a two-way conversation. There's certainly some facts and neurologic information that I can impart, but understanding the actual experience and what it feels like in the body of somebody who is experiencing these symptoms is really not something that the other side knows. And so your knowledge is extraordinarily important. So today, Sharon asked me to talk about APDA's initiative called Parkinsex, specifically to really address this issue. Now, as you all know, Parkinson's disease for a long time was thought of as a movement disorder, which is a problem moving. You may have tremor, you may get twitchy because you're taking medications that cause what we call dyskinesias. You may be stiff, slow, have problems walking, and that's all true. But there is a whole world of non-motor symptoms, which I'm sure each and every one of you can list, and how it affects you. And that a list can be very problematic and can really affect quality of life pretty dramatically. And one of the things on this non-motor list is sexual dysfunction. And this is something that is not talked about a whole lot. I think in more recent years, there's been a realization that this is an issue and something that needs to be addressed. But to this group, it's sort of easier to conceptualize what sexual dysfunction is in men than it is in women. And so even if sexual dysfunction was discussed among people with Parkinson's, it tended to focus on sexual dysfunction in men with Parkinson's and not women with Parkinson's. And of course, that is a simplification of the situation, and certainly sexual dysfunction affects both men and women. And how to discuss it, how to bring it up, how to overcome it, what the elements are all something that really was not addressed in the level of detail that people needed. Now, that isn't to say we have all the answers, and I am absolutely sure at the end of this, many of you will say, there are more questions than answers, and there are more problems than answers, and that's true, and that's true for many aspects of Parkinson's disease. But the hope with this initiative was to give some tools to start thinking about this issue in a little bit of a different way. Now, we partnered with a ad agency, basically Havas. It's a huge international ad agency and has a health branch called Havas Health. And they were really looking for a feel-good project, let's say. And we started this collaboration because it was really something that wasn't addressed. And together we created a resource to help people think about sexual dysfunction in Parkinson's. Now, what Sharon has and what the Feather is part of is a resource, a kit that was developed along with Havas Health. And I'm going to go through the kit. We'll explain all the elements of the kit, including the Feather. And there is a book that goes along with the kit that can be used as an actual book. That you can flip through, can be downloaded and read online, and it can be actually viewed online in the form of a Vimeo book. So there are many ways that this book can be accessed, and we'll go through that as well. Before we do that, I want to give just a brief overview of the problem of sexual dysfunction in Parkinson's. So Ellie, if you could show the next slide. So the issue of sexual dysfunction in Parkinson's, we all know it exists. It hasn't been studied a whole lot. This particular article is a recent good summary of what is known about the issue. And so I just wanted to highlight this particular journal article. There was a big data collection that took place over, I think, about 10 years. It was based mainly in Europe, and it was called the PRISM study. And it was basically a collection of surveys. It was a survey of people with Parkinson's trying to get a handle on the various symptoms that people had. And one of the elements of this survey was sexual dysfunction. And so it did collect quite a good amount of data on what people experienced in terms of sexual dysfunction when they had Parkinson's. And I put the summary sentence here, which is the urologic impact of Parkinson's, which often, if you go to a urologist and have Parkinson's, you're going to focus on urinary dysfunction, frequency, urgency, nocturia, peeing a lot at night, et cetera, et cetera. Hugely impactful, something that needs to be dealt with. But the other aspects of urologic impact of Parkinson's were not really explored that much. And that would be anorgasmia, decreased libido, and erectile dysfunction. Obviously, erectile dysfunction specifically is a male term, but the concept of anorgasmia and decreased libido are both for men and women. And overall, 50% of people with Parkinson's, both men and women, reported these type of symptoms in this survey, in this PRISM study survey. Next slide, please. Oh, that sexual dysfunction is an issue in Parkinson's, and there are neurologic reasons why that is the case. Now, these neurologic issues are twofold. We have, and this is the case for really all non-motor symptoms, why they occur, because you can have neurologic disruption in the brainstem, which is where a lot of the autonomic or the automatic non-motor symptoms are controlled. So that would be depression can be controlled from the lower brainstem. sleep disturbances, um, uh, 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 even constipation is controlled from the lower brainstem. So having abnormal pathology in the lower brainstem can lead to a lot of non-motor symptoms. In addition, you can have abnormal accumulation of alpha-synuclein, which is the pathologic hallmark of Parkinson's, really in many nerves throughout the body. You can have them in the nerves that line the gut, which can impact gut function. You can have them in the nerves that control the size of blood vessels as the blood vessels exit the heart, and that can be part of the orthostatic hypotension situation. You can also have them in the nerves that control bladder and sexual organs. And so you have sort of a two-prong problem. You have brainstem abnormalities, and then you have nerve cell abnormality. So really, Parkinson's disease is a dysfunction of nerves throughout the body, brain and body. So certainly that is a key reason why you have sexual dysfunction in Parkinson's. However, it is not the only thing that's going on, because sexual dysfunction is a hugely complex system and a hugely complex series of events that needs to happen that's impacted by all sorts of things that Parkinson's affects. And so even if you didn't have any Lewy bodies whatsoever in the brainstem or the nerves, you would have this list of things that would be interfering with sexual function. And they start with motor symptoms. You're not as limber, you're stiff, you tremor, you can't move as well. So that's going to impact having sex. Fluctuations, there's unreliability of doses. So now I can move well, now I can't. Well, how do I plan anything? How can I plan a night with my partner if I don't even know if I'm going to be able to move that night because my meds are so unreliable? And then you have the non-motor symptoms that can impact whether you want to have sex, depression, anxiety, apathy, the apathy of just not wanting to do something that used to be pleasurable, that can interfere. How about medications? How about a medication that you would take for depression, for Parkinson's depression, like an SSRI, which everybody knows, meaning the general, what I should have said is the general population knows, who have nothing to do with Parkinson's, can impact libido also. So that's a concern of many people who take SSRIs, certainly a concern if you take SSRIs and have Parkinson's. Then there's an issue that was actually raised in a question that was emailed ahead of time about change in your body. So let's say you overeat because of a medication that you take for your Parkinson's. And that can happen where you can get impulse control disorders from your medications. You can overeat, you can gain weight that you never had before, and that can impact how you view yourself. You can have the opposite. You can have weight loss from Parkinson's, and that makes you feel that your body's not what it was, or that looks different, or that impacts your body image. And that can interfere. And let's not forget about hypersexuality, which is a huge issue for some people who take Parkinson medications that can fuel a hypersexuality that creates a mismatch between the partners and what they're used to expressing to each other. And so that can impede a relationship as well. And then we have just the plain old stuff that may be entering your mind because you have Parkinson's. Let's say you're not in a relationship now, but you want to be. Can I get into a relationship? Should I tell the person that I have Parkinson's? I told them, and now I don't know what they think about that or me, or is it fair? I'm worried. All that stuff is another added element in certain situations. And then if you are in a relationship, the fact that now you may need more help, that you may not have that equal footing that you used to feel before, because you feel like you need the person a little more, or you're feeling like there's just a change in how the two of you related to each other because Parkinson's is in the way. And so this list is, I'm sure, not complete. I'm sure many of you have other things that you can add to this list, but this is just a taste of all the ways that Parkinson's disease can impact sexual dysfunction beyond the actual neurologic or urologic impact. Next slide, please. And so the goal of creating the Park and Sex Kit was to reframe the conversation. Um, Whatever was happening before may not work anymore. And there has to be an acknowledgement of that, and then an acceptance, and then okay, now what can we do? And so the idea was to create a guidebook of ways to reset the stage, and then tools and elements that can help reset the stage and reframe the conversation. So next slide, please. So on the left, you see the book, and the slides that follow this go through the book, and it will give you a taste of the different chapters of the book. And as I said before, the book is available in hard copy. It's also available for download, and it's available to be read to you, Vimeo style. On the right are the 6 elements that are contained within that box that you saw in the slide before, and that Sharon has next to her, where she is in LA. So the first is the feather. We have massage oil, scented candle, touchstones, blindfold, and bath bomb. And so these 6 elements come with the kit, and the book helps to position them, what to do with these 6 elements. Next slide, please. So this is just a taste of the first page. You can go to the next slide. And here are the 4 chapters. So the first element of the book is exploring making time. So you do not have to be spontaneous. It used to be spontaneity was part of the deal, but let's forget about that. We do not need to be spontaneous. In fact, with Parkinson's, it's really, really hard to be spontaneous because of motor fluctuations, because of variability in symptoms. And we have to own that. Okay, so spontaneity is not necessarily going to be part of the sexual experience anymore, and that is going to be okay. Now, if this isn't an issue for you and you do not have fluctuations in your symptoms, then you can ignore this chapter. But for those who that does speak to, acknowledging it and moving on is probably the way to go. So if there's not going to be spontaneity, then you must make time. You must say, it doesn't sound terribly romantic, but Monday at 7 o'clock, we are going to have sex. There we go. And so making time and putting it on the calendar is going to be important. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is setting the stage, creating an environment that is conducive. And so that may mean lighting the scented candle. So it's okay to try hard. It is really the point in chapter 2. It may not come easy, but a lot of good things don't come easy. And you cannot shy away from it because it's not easy anymore. We have to work at it. And I think Parkinson's disease and really, you guys showing up this morning on a Sunday morning, wherever you are in the country, Sunday afternoon, and making this a part of your life, and making ping pong a part of your life, and boxing a part of your life. None of that's easy. None of that is something that you just sort of like fall into. You make time, you put it on your calendar, you get up and go even if you don't want to. And that may be the situation here. So creating an environment where things are going to be easier, but it requires that additional effort. Chapter 3 is using some of those tools in the box to explore activities that you may not have explored. It used to be, you knew what sex was, you knew how it started and you knew how it ended, but that may not be possible anymore. And that has to be okay. So there's going to be other things that you can do to get a sexual experience that isn't necessarily going to be intercourse, isn't necessarily going to be orgasm. And that has to be okay as well in the right situation. And then 4 is the fact that all this may be very uncomfortable. This may not be where your mind was. You may never have had a conversation about sex with your partner ever. And you certainly may not be used to talking about it or using any of these words or really acknowledging that it can be hard work and that there has to be time on the calendar and then we're going to try something different than we never tried before because I can't do XYZ anymore. All this may be very new to both of you. And so acknowledging that okay, we're going to do it anyway. We're gonna you get out of our comfort zone. And that's what chapter 4 is about. Next slide, please. So another key element of this book is that it does not assume anything about the people involved. And so the pictures are meant to be not specifically men or women, not all different kinds of body shapes. This isn't about gorgeous 20-year-old men and women. This is about people. And so there's a melding of body shapes, body types, and genders, so that this is not meant to be, it does not assume anything about the participants. And that was really important when we designed the book. Next slide. So here's the kit. And so on the left is the book on top of the elements. There's the feather and then places for the other pieces of it. Next slide, please. We designed the book in collaboration with Sheila Silver. Sheila Silver is a clinical sexologist who has a lot of experience specifically with Parkinson's disease, and this is a rare breed. And you may have heard of her. I'm sure many of you have heard her speak or know of her existence. She's a great resource, and she was able to give us a lot of clarity about how to go and what to do with the different chapters and the different elements of the ideas that we wanted to get across with the book. Next slide, please. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is chapter 1. This is the what I talked about already, basically focusing on scheduling time, and that scheduling time has to be part of this at this point, and that's okay. And acknowledging the limits has to be okay, and redefining what sex is has to be okay. It would be amazing if we could return to our pre-Parkinson selves. But if that can't happen, then going with it is really important, and having sexual experiences regardless of the limitations is really, really what this is all about. Next slide, please. So the comfort zone, this is the chapter where the scented candle is going to be used, setting the stage, making sure that there's music, that there's the right setting, that the whatever it is that's going to make you feel comfortable is put in place. Next slide, please. And so here's the kind of crux of how to use the rest of the elements. So in this chapter, the expansion of the definition of sex. This is something that Sheila Silver talks about all the time, and this is sort of her thing, and that's why she was so taken by this idea, because this is what she's been trying to preach for the whole time. That it isn't about one particular thing. It's about the experience of two people being together and having a sexual experience together, whatever that may be. And so the feather is meant to invoke a certain kind of touch that you may not experience all the time. There are those stones, those smooth stones that can be used to give touch as well, massage oils as well, and bath bomb. These are things that can be used to invoke touches that aren't necessarily something that you're used to or that you do a lot. And so it's sort of exploring all those other ways that you can touch that aren't necessarily something that you've done before. And so it brings a bit of novelty and newness to a relationship that may have kind of fallen on kind of repetitive experiences that don't work anymore. And so this is a way to kind of move the conversation forward. And so of the elements in the book, there's 6 elements. The scented candle sets the stage. 4 of those elements are touching elements. And then finally, the next slide, please. The last one, the no judgments, no scorecard, is how to really start that conversation when it may be very uncomfortable, even though you been married to this person for 50 years. How could anything be uncomfortable? And yet it can be. And so one of the ways to kind of take away that feeling of, oh, I don't really feel comfortable doing this is a blindfold. So you put on the blindfold and you sort of take away that one element, and you sort of can maybe be a little more free in other elements if you don't have that sort of feeling that that you're looking at someone or someone's looking at you. So taking away that one sort of piercing, what exactly is going on here can really separate you kind of enough to get the conversation going. So that's the sixth element of the book. Next slide, please. And so the final chapter is basically acknowledging everything that we've just discussed and saying, okay, it's now in your hands. This is the next phase of your sexual relationship. Here are some tools and take it to the next level. Next slide, please. So, as we mentioned, Dr. Sheila Silver was very involved in helping us, and then we got feedback from many people with Parkinson's, and we do thank them very much because obviously, without end user experience, knowing that this is something that people will resonate with them and will find useful, we obviously would not move forward. So, thank you to everyone who helped us with that. Next slide, please. So, how do you get a copy of this book if you'd like to? So you can go to apdaparkinson.org/parkinsex, and it's all there. You can, as I mentioned, watch the video, download the book, or actually request a kit, and that is free. So you can do any and all of the above. When you go to the website currently, you will see that the website looks slightly differently because we have a second tier that I probably should have had a slide about. We created, along with Havas, a Parkinsex card game, which is basically a brief, quick little card game that depicts the 6 elements that are in the kit, and the rules are of the card game are part of the deck, and you basically try to match. It's sort of like a matching game, matching the different elements of the kit. And the idea behind this is it's sort of a gateway to the kit, so it sort of gets the conversation going. Like, what's the bath bomb for? And it gets the ideas that, oh, we're going to be doing something that maybe we haven't done before, going before. So it's sort of the intro to this kit, and that's available now as well. So that's sort of another element that we can bring into the conversation. And next slide. So that's my presentation. It takes us to exactly 1:30, which was my goal. And I would love to hear your thoughts and answer questions that you may have, and hear what you think about the kit and what you think about sexual dysfunction and Parkinson's in general.